word to Ron to introduce our guest. So enjoy the webinar.
Yeah. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar organized by Resilience for Dairy project in collaboration with Laura. The Resilience for Dairy, as you know, is one of the most recent European projects to contribute social, economical, and environmental development in the dairy sector of Europe. And one of the main objectives is to strengthen the relationship between farmers, researchers, and relevant actors in the dairy sector, with the intention of creating better solutions through the exchange of knowledge among participants. Within this exchange of knowledge, we must take into account different activities, such as this webinar that Asher Garcia, a researcher at Naked Animal Production Department in Basque Country, is going to present us today. The presentation, as you know, is entitled Strategies to Reduce Enteric Methane Emissions. And without further ado, I give the floor to Asher. So thank you very much. Asher.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you, John, for this presentation. And I would like also to thank the organizers of this webinar for giving me the chance to be here with you. And without that, I'm going to share my screen so that you can see my presentation. There we go. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So this presentation will deal with some of the strategies that we can use to reduce enteric methane emissions. I will begin by briefing the problem of enteric methane emissions. I will continue with showing you some of the devices we use to measure methane. And I will end this presentation by showing some strategies that can be used to reduce methane emissions. For instance, the genetic selection breeding program, and also some nutritional strategies that can be used. Okay, what is methane? Methane, it is a fermentation gas that is produced during the fermentation of the feed in the rumen. So I will say it again. It is a fermentation gas. Okay, it is produced during fermentation, not during digestion, but fermentation. And in order to get this methane, we need carbon dioxide and hydrogen. So if we want to reduce methane emissions, it is clear to me that we need to act either on carbon dioxide production or hydrogen production. In general terms, methane emissions depends on three factors. The main drive, it is dry matter intake. This is the main reason why a cow will always produce more methane than a sheep. I mean, methane emissions expressed as grams per day, okay? Like I said before, the main drive is dry matter intake. This is again the reason why a cow producing 40 liters will always produce more methane than a cow producing 25 liters or so. Imagine that now we have two cows that have the same dry matter intake. Then the next main drive that will affect methane emissions is how much of that intake is truly fermented, because not all the feed that the cow eats will be fermented. One example of this will be fats. Fats are a very interesting energy source, but the point here is that those fatty acids are not fermented in the rumen, and as a consequence, they will not produce methane. And last but not least, another factor that will affect methane emissions is the fermentation pattern, because depending on the final fermentation product, we will get more carbon dioxide or hydrogen. For instance, acetic acid production in the rumen will yield carbon dioxide and hydrogen, whereas propionic acid production will not produce neither of them. Therefore, any fermentation pattern leading to propionic acid will be more effective than any other pattern that will lead to acetic acid production. But why methane or not carbon dioxide? There are many reasons that you can see all of them in this slide. But in my opinion, the most important reasons are those that are highlighted in red. The first one says, for a time horizon of 100 years, methane has a global warming potential 28 times higher than carbon dioxide. This means that methane has a much more stronger effect than carbon dioxide. And the second one says that the atmospheric lifetime of methane is just 9 years, making it a good target for climate change mitigation. Why is so? Because any effect that I can do on methane will have a much faster effect on global warming than that I would get if I acted on carbon dioxide. Are there any other reasons that would be interesting for a farmer to try to reduce methane emissions? Well, yes, there are. In this figure, you can see how the energy is lost during the fermentation and the digestion process. Let's say that the feed that we offer a cow has an energy. That is the gross energy of that feed. But not all of the feed that is contained, not all the energy that is contained in the feed will be used by the animal, because there are some losses during the fermentation and the digestion process. As you can see there, one of those is methane. So anything we can do to reduce methane emissions can be useful for the farmer, because more of the energy contained in the feed will reach the animal. Okay, so how can we measure methane? There are very many devices that we can use to measure methane. There are the laser beam, the respiration chambers, the Greenfield system, but one that or the one that I will show you today is the so-called sniffers. The sniffer has different devices inside. As you can see in yellow, we have a methane recording card. We also have a carbon dioxide recording card and a data logger, so that we can store all the information regarding methane and CO2. We also have a rearmable differential, which is very interesting and important in a situation where an electric shutdown could occur. And we also have an alarm there that will send us an SMS to our mobile, so that we can see when there is an obturation in the tube of the sniffer. But this is the system that measures methane. But as you all know, methane is exhaled by the animal. So I need to find a way that I can link the mouth or the nostril of the cow with these devices that can measure methane. Okay. At the very beginning, we gave it a hard thought to where we could locate this device, because we need a place where the cow can stick her head there willingly, okay, and she keeps the head there steady without moving for a long period of time. Like I said before, we gave it a hard thought and we thought that the automatic milking system could be a very interesting solution. Why? Because there the cows are fed, as you can see in the picture, and she keeps her head there for at least 10 minutes. So if we get to put our tube, there you can see on the fourth picture, inside the yellow square, you can see a gray tube. Inside that gray tube, there is a thinner tube that is connected to the sniffer device, okay, which is located close to the automatic milking system. And as a consequence, on the last picture, you can see the output we get. And those green marks are the eructation events that we can record. But this is not enough because the sniffer device does not tell me which cow is inside the automatic milking system. So I need information from the automatic milking system, which is the traffic Excel file that I will merge with the methane production, and I will get the file with the information I need, which is which cow is producing what amount of methane. Once we have figure out how to measure methane under commercial conditions, we had this project, which is the methane project, which aimed to use metagenomics to improve feed efficiency and reduce methane emissions in dairy cattle. In this project, or the partners in this project were INEA, which is the National Institute for Agronomic Research here in Spain, CONAFE, which is the National Confederation of Producers of Holstein Friesian Producers, and NACER. During this project, we moved or we measured methane emissions in 14 commercial farms, and we measured the methane emissions of over 1,500 cows. With that information, or you can see a more detailed report on the results of this project if you visit the web page. But one of the most important one, it is summarized in this table. You can see here which is the heritability and the repeatability of different traits, which are the concentration of methane in the exhaled breath, which is the first row of that table, the methane production, which is the second row, okay? And as you can see there, methane is a measurable and heritable trait. It is the heritability, it is not very high. It is 0.11 and 0.12 for those traits. But the most important thing is that it is a pretty high repeatable trait. Seeing these results, CONAFE decided that they would try to include this phenotype in the breeding program. And as you know, 1,500 measurements it is not good enough for that. So CONAFE decided that although the project had finished, that they would keep on measuring methane. Now they have another project, which is NEOAS, which tries really to measure in individual methane emissions on farms, okay? And now we are measuring methane on another 60 commercial farms in order to get more cows. Now almost 7,000 cows. This project it is ongoing. I don't have results so far because CONAFE is already working on that. So to me, the genetic selection, it is the best tool in order to reduce methane emissions. Why? Because the effect it is cumulative. This means that the gain I get today, I will not lose it tomorrow. And to me, that is the most important thing. Okay, but it also has some constraints. Which ones? The first one, it needs a huge amount of data, and this requires measuring a lot of cows. Second, it is not easy to measure methane under productive conditions in those farms that do not have an automatic milking systems. Okay, and to me the greatest limitation is that it is a long-term solution. We need a lot of years to see the effect of the genetic solution, and so today we need short-term solutions to give the genetic breeding programs time to do their job, and that's when the nutritional strategies have their role. In this presentation, I will show you two nutritional strategies. First, the biochar, and second, the effect of cold press linseed cake. These are two examples, but there are very many that you can find on the literature. Okay, what is biochar? In this slide, you can see the process that is followed in order to produce biochar. We start this process with a vegetable part. In this case, it is wood chips. Those wood chips are pyrolyzed, which implies a combustion, a not full combustion of these wood chips at very high temperature. The result of that process is then cooled down and then activated with different microorganisms. And then it is when you get the biochar. So depending on your initial vegetable part, the conditions of the pyrolysis, and which microorganisms you use to activate it, you will have different biochars. That is why you can find very variable results on the literature as far as the biochar is concerned. But why is biochar so interesting? Two reasons. The first one, because it has a great active surface, which confers it absorption properties. And second, because it has a very huge redox activity. This is why the biochar has been used in agronomy, first as soil fertilizers, but also as a means to control mycotoxin development in silage. It has also been used to reduce odors in slurry and to reduce emissions of methane. But like I said before, depending on the vegetable material you use at the beginning, the pyrolysis process conditions, mainly the temperature that is used, and the activation and the microorganisms that you use in the activation, you will have the different results. That is why we took a sample of the biochar that is produced here in northern Spain, and we ran a trial in order to see if this biochar produced with pine tree wood chips could be used to reduce methane emissions in dairy cows. This trial was performed under commercial conditions, so we cannot, under commercial conditions, you cannot use two different feeding regimes at the same time because the farmer did not allow it in this case. So what we did was use 3 different feeding periods. A first feeding period where the cows were fed the commercial feeding. This is what the farmer was actually giving them. A second feeding period where the cows were fed the concentrate containing 2% biochar in its composition. Animals were fed this feeding biochar for over a month, and then animals were again fed the commercial feeding. Okay, during this feeding period, we took samples. We measured milk production of the 90 cows that stayed during the 3 periods. We also took samples of the tank in order to determine the effect on crude fat and crude protein. And we also measured methane emissions using the sniffer that I just showed you a few minutes ago. What we saw was this. In this picture, you can see the effect of the biochar on milk production. As you can see, on the first feeding period, animals produce over 35 liters per day, which was the same that the animals produced during the second period where they were fed biochar. And we also found the same production during the third period when the cows were fed again the control feed. So as you can see, biochar did not affect milk production. Similar trends, we observed similar trends in milk composition because feeding biochar did not affect the composition of the crude fat content or the crude protein content of the milk. But when we looked at the methane emissions, we observed that during the first period, when the animals were fed the control concentrate, methane emissions of the cows was over 400 grams per day. Okay, for those of you not very familiar with these values, they are the usual data. Okay, a cow will produce more or less 400 grams per day. Okay, but when biochar was fed, as you can see in this figure, methane emissions were reduced below 300. Okay, this effect was significant, but most importantly, in my opinion, this reduction was relevant because it is over a 30% reduction. When the animals were fed again the control diet, as you can see in the figure, methane production was again increased up to the level of the first feeding period. The same trend was observed when we look at grams of methane per liter of milk. Okay, this is called the methane intensity. Okay, and as you can see, methane formulating biochar in the concentrate reduce again methane intensity over 30%. So the take-home ideas of this trial is that biochar reduced methane emissions either in grams per day or grams per liter by over 30%, but it did not improve milk production or affect milk composition. This may raise the question whether this additive is interesting for the farmer, because I don't think that the farmer will be willing to increase the cost of the concentrate just to reduce methane if he doesn't find an increase in milk production or milk composition. The second nutritional strategy that I will show you today, it is the use of oil seeds as ingredients in the concentrate. This is on this slide you can see the process that we use to obtain these cold press oil seed cakes. Everything begins with the seed. Once the seed is harvested, it doesn't matter whether it is rapeseed, sunflower, or linseed, it is put into this press. It is the press that you see on the picture. And as you can see, it is a very simple press. That press costs no more than 3,000 euros. And it is just a mechanical pressing. This implies that the co-product or the solid product that we get will not go through an extraction, a solvent extraction. This is important because the product that we have after this process is rich in protein, almost 30% crude protein content, but it is also very rich in fat. Okay, it is between 20 and 25% of fat content. So this cake, let's say rapeseed cake, it is not the same as the rapeseed cake that you can find on the market, because the rapeseed cake or meal that you can find on the market has suffered a solvent extraction process, so that the crude protein content of that meal, it is higher, let's say, or close to 40%, but the fat content of that meal, it is much lower, more or less 2%. So although these cakes or meals share the name, they are different, okay? And this is important because what I am interested, or the reason why I am interested in this ingredient, it is because it has fat, which has a very high energy content, but is not fermentable. Please remember that on my first slide, I said that not all the energy is fermented, and that energy that is not fermented will produce no methane. Okay, this is interesting, but not only because of that. Fat has also an antimicrobial effect on which can affect the microbial populations that live in the rumen, and that can alter the fermentation pattern towards more propionic. And remember, the higher the propionic acid in the rumen, the less methane that will be produced. Any problems with feeding fats? Well, yes. The first one, it has a very high market price. The fat or the fats that you can buy on the market, but not the one that I just showed you. Okay, that is very cheap, very cheap to obtain, and it is local produce. Another constraint is that it can also lead to a digestibility reduction. This digestibility reduction is higher as the unsaturation of the fat increases. Okay, let's say that rapeseed is less problematic than sunflower, and sunflower is less problematic than linseed. Okay. In this, in the coming or on the coming slides, I will show you the effect, the results that we have found when we have formulated or included cold pressed linseed cake in the concentrate of dairy cows. This trial was performed under commercial conditions, and that is why in this case we use two different groups. Okay, one of we use 16 cows. Eight of those cows were fed with the control concentrate, and another 8 cows were fed with a concentrate that contained 13% of cold pressed linseed cake. The trial lasted for 8 weeks. We took measurements during the last 5, and the concentrates, which is very important, were formulated to provide similar amounts of energy, crude protein, and fat. This is what we found. Our hypothesis was that by feeding cold pressed linseed cake, we would affect somehow the fermentation process of the rumen. In this figure, you can see the fermentation end product in the rumen, starting with acetic acid, propionic acid, butyric acid, and valeric acid. As you can see, we observed a slight increase on propionic acid concentration in those cows that were fed linseed cake. This is interesting again because we altered the fermentation process by reducing the acetic to propionic acid, ratio, which indicates that the fermentation process in the rumen was more efficient in those cows that were fed linseed cake. This is the result that we were looking for, trying to find a reduction on methane emissions. What we really observed. On the first figure on your left, you can see the effect of linseed cake on methane emissions expressed as ppm, which is the concentration of methane on the exhaled air of the cow. As you can see there, we observe a significant reduction, but also a relevant one, because this reduction was over 15%. On the second picture, you see the effect on grams per day, and as you can see, we also observe a reduction there, okay, of over 18%. As you can see there again, methane emission in the control cows was 400 grams per day, and it was reduced to 325 or so. But the most important result is that, which is the third picture on your right, is that we found a very important reduction on methane intensity. Okay, why did we see this result? This greater effect on methane intensity, and that is why, the reason is that feeding cold-pressed linseed cake also increased milk production over 13%, but at the expense of reducing the milk fat and milk protein content just by a dilution effect. So just to summarize the results that we have found, and the take-home ideas, is first that cold-pressed linseed cake shifted the ruminal fermentation pattern towards a more efficient one. This shift reduced methane emissions, either in grams per day or grams per liter. It improved milk production, but at the expense of milk composition. And this is all on my side. Thanks a lot for your attention. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much. There are some questions in the chat. Can you see those questions, Asa?
The chat, okay.
Can you see them?
Yep.
I can also read them. The first one was from Anthony. Did cows have to be fed the biochar continuously, or could cows be fed the biochar 2 times per day?
The biochar was formulated in the concentrate, so animals were fed every time they went into the automatic milking system, and a cow will go to the automatic milking system 2 or 3 times per day. So 2 or 3 times per day will be fed by biochar.
Okay.
The biochar expensive? That depends. Okay, that depends, but I can't tell you the price right now, but I can figure it out. I can ask the provider, and I will come back to you. If it is possible to give the biochar in a grazing situation, again, I think it is, because although the cow grazes, let's say an ecological farm, those cows, or some of those cows, they are usually fed a concentrate. So as long as the biochar is formulated in the concentrate, and the formula and the cows are offered concentrates, they can be fed with biochar. So I do not see any reason why a grazing cow could not be fed biochar, and I think it is it would be interesting in that situation, because grass is characterized by having a very important content of crude protein that is rapidly degraded in the rumen. And I think that biochar could or play some role there by reducing this excess of nitrogen. So I think it could be very useful in that situation. Okay. No, that study has not the bio. These results have not been published yet, but they are. We are working on that, and they will be published during this year for sure, hopefully. And as soon as I have that preprint, for instance, I can send it to you. Well, thank you. Any palatability issues with biochar? In this situation, the farmer was happy. And I think that is the best opinion that you can find as for the palatability issues. Because, again, if the concentrate is fed in the automatic milking system, if the cow does not like the concentrate because it has biochar, she will not be willingly going to the automatic milking system, and the farmer will have to fetch her and get her inside. The farmer, like I said before, was happy. He never said anything about this. So in this trial, I would say that no palatability issues were found. We have also done another trials with dairy sheep, where we actually measure concentrate intake and dry matter intake of the forage, and we did not see there a palatability issue.
Well, thank you very much for those answers. I hope your questions or the answers are clear now. If not, please just raise your hand or write again in the chat. Are there some other questions? If not, I would thank you very much for this interesting presentation. There's another one from Anthony. What are the different types of biochar?
Well, I can't. Like I said in the presentation, there are very many different biochars available, but not all the information is available. This means that not all the providers or articles in the literature say what vegetable was used. They don't say the pyrolysis conditions, and the pyrolysis conditions are very, 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 very important, because it is not the same if you reach 800 degrees or 400 degrees. And also the activation, which microorganisms are used. So there are very many different biochars, and that information is not ready available unless you ask for it. I can't tell you very much about that, sorry.
Okay. Some other questions? Seems not. So thank you very much for the presentation. Ron, do you have something else to tell us?
No, the same. Thank you very much to all
Okay.
people connected, and see you in the next webinar.
Yes. Thank you very much and have a nice day. Bye.
See you. Bye.